I'd actually really love to dive into that. And something that you said on a previous podcast that I would love to hear more about. And I've interviewed someone else, actually our mutual friend Chris, about his battle with depression. And for him, the way he describes it is it's like, there are just sort of out of nowhere, there would be, for lack of a better word, voices telling him to, or thoughts. I don't, yeah, not necessarily outside voices, but like, voices in your head that are saying like, just kill himself. And that, he just has to kind of like weather that storm and deal with it. And you said something that like really, really caught my attention in this other podcast where you referred to it as like a sweet sounding voice. That the voice became like sweeter over time. Can you talk about that? Like what was going actually like on for you in those moments?
Yeah. So I had the most incredible year from 2013 to 14 when living in Israel, studying abroad at Tel Aviv University. I rescued a
Is that when you're
dog.
promoting and stuff and doing all
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
the height of my douchiness, which was like such amazing. I remember because I was 20 years old and I was standing outside a club, one of the hottest clubs in Israel at the time, named Clara, no longer exists. And I couldn't get in because one, I was a broke college kid and, I didn't have a bunch of beautiful women with me. That's also another way of getting into clubs sometimes. And so I was like, this sucks. So I ended up becoming a promoter. And then obviously I had access to whatever I wanted, which is a whole other fun world. And then I also like rescued a dog. I worked in the startup world, which Israel's famous for. It was a whole incredible journey. Fell in love. It was a whole thing. But I come back after that amazing year, back to my university at Towson. I'm now a junior. And I was there my freshman year, went to Israel my sophomore year, come back as a junior. And I fall into a very deep state of depression because my environment was so different. It was so hard to relate to people, so hard to talk to people. I didn't really know how to express myself. I definitely was not in tune with myself. Like what was mental health? I had no idea what that was. And it started where I would start getting like just angry. And I remember being in class and my voices, because Chris is correct there, my voices would be shouting matches in my
Hmm.
head. And it
Hmm.
would be like saying really mean things to me. But they were like yelling at each other and saying like very mean things about me to each other. And
Do you
I
mind like
literally,
sharing just like what are some of the things that they would say to you?
I think it'd be like, you're stupid. Like, what are you doing? And I remember I was in class. I remember like, I could not hear the professor because like these voices were so loud.
It's literally like an auditory kind of sensation.
Yeah, it's like you're
Wow.
wearing headphones right now. Imagine just like
Yeah.
having like your headphones glued on. You can't take them off. You can't turn off the
Wow.
music.
Yeah, because I've struggled with like really negative thoughts, but I've never had like I would say like an audible type of experience in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and I remember just like the voices were. So this is what ended up happening. The voices were like really loud, and then after a while, one of the voices went away, and the other voice that stayed ended up talking sweet to me. And that's where like more of the seductive voice came from. And it was like, listen, like, I know you're going through a lot of hard times right now. And like, I have a solution for you if you want. And it's like very easy. And, this will like end all your pain. And I was like, it didn't sound so bad. And now we're in the fall of 2014. I remember it was October. And in the most fucked up game of Clue, I like chose like the weapon, the room, the time, the date of when I was planning my suicide. And I remember I was so fortunate because another voice, could not explain it, came out of nowhere in the head and said, I remember it said something like, you don't need to do this tonight. You can do another night. Just why don't you call the school therapist? It didn't even say don't do it. It just like delayed it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
just like almost like when it's like starting a diet tomorrow, right? But it's the opposite effect, right? It's
Yeah.
a human psychology thing of like, just you could do it tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all good. Just do it tomorrow. And thank God, I was like, wild. Thank God that
Wow.
voice came into my head because I ended up calling the therapist and I went and I had a one-on-one session and it was fine. But what really did it for me, what really helped me was I was in group therapy. Have you ever done group therapy?
I have not. No, I've never done group therapy. I've done personal growth type things that have a group element to it, but I've never done like a group therapy session. Yeah.
Yeah, group therapy was wild. It was, we were not allowed to talk to each other outside of the group. So literally, if I saw you in the hallway of school, could not talk to you, could not say anything to you, had to ignore you, had to walk past you. I don't know why. I didn't make the rules. And also, we weren't allowed to give each other advice in the circle. All we were allowed to do was share our experience. So imagine it was like a circle of one-upping each other of like the most fucked up things that we're all about to do to each
Mm,
other. It was like,
yeah.
if you thought that was bad, I tried drinking bleach. And another guy was like, I put a gun in my mouth. And I was just like, holy shit. Like, this was, it was nuts. And I know it sounds bad, but I was like, I'm not as fucked up as I probably think I am. And it was like
Mm,
that weird perspective shift of like, I have issues, but I am not drinking bleach like the person next to me is.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think that was the first sobering moment, because very much when you're in your
Yeah.
own depression, it's a spiral, it's a downward spiral.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because for a while, before I even got to the me picking the day of my suicide, I actually forgot how to speak. Where my jaw clenched shut, and I would have to walk around with a notebook and I would write out things in order to communicate with people. Being in group therapy actually started to unlock things for me, because I was actually able to like start to come through. And then it took about another year to actually feel like okay again. But that was the moment where at least I knew I wasn't going to commit suicide. So
Hmm.
that's a win.
Yeah. Was there, with your like depression and that coming on, was there a like something that happened that like specifically like triggered that
Oh
moment?
yeah.
Like were you dealing with like shame for something? Like what was it that like kind of no? Yeah.
So this is where I think now that I look back on it, because I don't know the quote. Someone said the quote where like you can't see the plan in front of you. You can only connect the dots when you look back on it. When I left, this was during 2014 in the summer. This was when Hamas launched a war against Israel, and it was called Operation Protective Edge, where Hamas, an internationally recognized terrorist organization that lives in the Gaza Strip, was firing a lot of rockets into Israel. And Israel was using a defense system called the Iron Dome, which I can get into, taking a bullet to shoot another bullet out of the sky. Wild. And I left during the war because I was just done in my year to come home. And I felt so hopeless and helpless. And like, they're sending soldiers into Gaza to stop the terrorists. Like, people are having to hide in shelters. My sister had to go to a shelter. The girl I was dating at the time had to go to a shelter. Like, it was like real. And I felt so hopeless and helpless because I couldn't do anything. All I could do was like watch the news, which is like the worst thing you could ever do. And I'm probably sure that really caused it, because I knew I couldn't do anything. And then I would have conversations, and no fault to anyone else. I would have conversations, and there would be like normal conversations about sports or like girls. And I'm like, there's a fucking war going on. I don't give a shit about this, but I didn't have an outlet. So of course, naturally I was very angry. So I started resenting people. So I started pushing away people,
Yeah.
which actually came up again, which we can talk about when I recently came back from Poland, like now over a year ago. But that was the moment. Like that's why I believe I fell into depression, because I felt very like I couldn't do anything to stop terrorists from trying to kill my people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it sounds very similar to what a lot of like soldiers deal with, right? When they go to war and then they come back, and it's like there's a lot of plays that deal with this concept of, whether it was the Korean War or World War II or whatever. It's like you come back and it's like people are just like, hey, yeah, let's go to the market. And you're like I just watched four of my brothers die. I just watched, all this stuff. It's like, where, like, how do I even assimilate back into a culture that everything is just sort of, for lack of a better word, normal or
Yeah.
non-chaotic?